In 1996, the United States Treasury released a completely redesigned $100 bill. They spent years developing highly classified security features, explicitly engineering a note they believed independent counterfeiters could never replicate. Yet, within months, a high school dropout from Chicago successfully cracked the design. This grew into a sophisticated battle of engineering between an underfunded street kid and the United States Treasury. The government had the full financial backing of the state and top-tier material scientists, but Arthur Williams Jr. had a basement, a mid-century press, and an obsessive level of patience. Arthur's childhood was shattered when his father suddenly abandoned the family, forcing them into one of Chicago's most notorious housing projects. In an environment defined by the exigencies of survival, he quickly learned to navigate the illicit economy of the streets. Rather than joining a street gang, Arthur found a surrogate father in his mother's boyfriend, an old-school Italian forger known as Da Vinci. Da Vinci taught him that counterfeiting was a master's craft requiring extreme patience. He instilled a rigid rule for survival. If you let your operation get too big, you will get caught. Arthur had finally found the mentorship he craved, but this new foundation was built entirely on a federal crime, tying Arthur's sense of family directly to the very trade that would eventually put him on the government's radar. The Treasury Department's 1996 New Note D redesign was specifically launched to render the tools of traditional counterfeiters obsolete. The first major hurdle was the counterfeit detection pen. Retailers everywhere started using these markers, which use iodine to detect starch. Because almost all standard commercially available paper contains starch, a fake bill will instantly turn the ink dark brown. Arthur bypassed the chemical test entirely. After testing hundreds of samples, he discovered that standard directory paper, the exact kind used to print common phone books, is manufactured starch-free. When marked with a detector pen, the ink stays a passing light yellow. To replicate the heavy, crisp feel of authentic currency, Arthur laminated multiple layers of directory paper together. Before gluing them shut, he secretly slipped fake security threads and hand-sketched watermarks inside the layers. On the 1996 bill sits the government's most advanced barrier, optically variable ink, shifting from green to black. Unable to buy the restricted ink, Arthur sourced iridescent automotive paint, applying it perfectly using a custom rubber stamp. He also integrated new digital technology, utilizing a bootleg copy of Adobe Photoshop and an early Apple Macintosh to recreate the fine-line backgrounds and simulated microprinting that scanners were designed to fail. Arthur bypassed the government's defenses by engineering a hybrid masterpiece. He combined 19th-century offset printing with 20th-century digital software to expose the physical vulnerability of currency. Operating out of a small Chicago basement he called the Dungeon, Arthur scaled his production, printing an estimated $10 million in fake currency over a 10-year career. He followed a strict strategy to stay off the radar. He refused to spend the money himself, instead wholesaling batches to organized crime syndicates for 30 cents on the dollar. This generated massive wealth and a James Bond lifestyle, a stark reversal from the housing projects of his youth. By the late 90s, Arthur was a master of the physical variables. He could control the printing press, the thin directory paper, and the ink with absolute precision. But while his bills were technically perfect, his operation now depended on a factor he couldn't engineer: the people around him. Arthur eventually broke all of Da Vinci's rules about staying small and anonymous. He traveled to Alaska to rescue his long-lost biological father, attempting to use his illicit trade to fix his broken family ties. He left the absolute discipline of his Chicago dungeon behind. Working in the Alaskan wilderness, without his specialized press or chemicals, Arthur produced bills that were sloppy and rushed. The operational breach was catastrophic. His father carelessly distributed the inferior fakes, which shared duplicate serial numbers, to local friends, creating a massive footprint that the banking system was designed to flag. The Secret Service followed the trail, leading to wiretaps, coordinated raids, and a federal prison sentence for both Arthur and his father. A $10 million criminal empire survived every advanced security feature the government could invent. In the end, it was dismantled by a desperate need for a father's love. The consequences carried a devastating irony. On the exact day Arthur walked out of federal prison, he learned that his father had died of a heart attack in his cell that very morning. During his incarceration, Arthur had pivoted. He studied the techniques of Renaissance masters, channeling his obsessive attention to detail into painting rather than forgery. He is now a highly paid gallery artist whose work is collected by celebrities, athletes, and, ironically, several corporate Mancs. His primary tool for this legal work is the exact same 1956 A.B. Dick offset press he once used in his Chicago basement to print millions in fake cash. Arthur Williams Jr. spent years trying to break the financial system. In the end, he achieved his goal of making money, not by dismantling the $100 bill, but by putting the same printing press to a legal use that the galleries finally valued.